As a young person, I share many of the frustrations that young people have in our society today. To begin with, even though I'm 31, I get ID'd all of the time. Considering it's an under-25s challenge, then I never really know what to make of that. I had a particularly embarrassing time when I didn't have any ID, but I did have a New Statesman article that had my photo and my age in it. The woman duly accepted it as ID, even though I don't think it actually constitutes as official identification. But when she handed it back to me, she commented on the fact that I was too young to be a political leader. And I find that really interesting, to think that in a time when we're struggling with youth representation, that there's a specific age that you should be to be in politics or even be a leader in politics. And beyond that, I actually think my age perfectly puts me in a place to talk about my favorite topic, and that's inspiring young people in politics. Because I think we often look at political parties using youth engagement as a panacea to get more votes, get more volunteers, and effectively win more seats. And I think we need to stop talking about what young people can do for political parties and start thinking about what political parties can do for young people. It was made clear to me the importance of youth engagement when I was elected number 8 on the London Assembly list for the Green Party for the European elections. At this time, I was able to work with students from across the EU to have training schemes that helped build and diversify our skills and experiences so that we'd be able to deliver the campaign effectively. This began as training for the under-30s, because the under-30s are underrepresented and the under-30s tend not to vote. Then I had training schemes for the under-35s, because the under-35s are underrepresented and the under-35s tend not to vote. And finally, I was invited to events for the under-40s, because the under-40s are underrepresented and the under-40s don't vote. Now, we have a term in our society that seems to be ingrained. That term is apathetic generation. And if we're talking about the under-40s not engaging in politics, we are not talking about an apathetic generation. We are on course to an apathetic population. This motivated me to go out and create the kind of politics that people want to be a part of, and specifically that young people want to be a part of. I went out originally signing people up as council candidates, young people up as council candidates, because all the evidence shows that if you get youth representation, it inspires young people to go out and vote for those candidates because they feel represented. This is something, it not only does that have that youth representation, but it also gives young people the opportunity to prove what they can do in politics. This is something that's very poignant for me because it was as a result of this work that in 2014, the Young Greens asked me to stand as Deputy Leader of the Green Party of England and Wales to continue this work. I have to confess, between you and me, I didn't think I'd win. My entire manifesto was based on young people and youth representation and a young vote, something that I was passionate about, but I didn't necessarily think was a campaign-winning idea. Obviously, I was proven wrong. And in September 2014, I was elected Deputy Leader of the Green Party of England and Wales, aged 29, making me the youngest person in a political leadership position in the UK. This gave me an opportunity to talk to young people up and down the country, and today I want to share many of the thoughts and experiences that I have talking to people across the UK. To begin with, I actually think we need to frame this discussion correctly before we begin. We need to stop talking about an apathetic generation and start talking about uninspiring politicians. We need to, if young people aren't going out to vote, it's probably because they haven't been given something to go out and vote for. And I don't like to talk about an apathetic generation because participating in politics isn't just about going out to vote. It's how you engage in other institutions as well. I see young people going out to volunteer in their communities at unprecedented levels. I saw 50,000 young people take to the streets of London to demonstrate against the unfair rise in tuition fees by our government. I see young people using social media to sign and share petitions and to comment on their political opinions on the current political landscape. I see a generation that's losing its faith in politics due to a trail of broken promises that have been created by previous governments. Promises, having policies that impact our generation, whether it's from education, whether it's from jobs, or even the creation of a housing crisis that young people didn't cause. And we know that politics can inspire. We've just seen a Scottish referendum where 85% of people went out to vote. That's the highest numbers that we saw since the introduction of universal suffrage. And it showed that in Scotland, not only can we inspire people to go out and vote, but if you do have votes at 16, then it encourages stronger voter registration for young people, as well as push the spotlight onto their generation. This opportunity meant that we saw more people getting into the habit of voting. So in the general election, we also saw that in Scotland, an area that usually has lower voter turnout for a general election than the rest of the UK, that 71% of people went out to vote compared to 66% in the rest of the UK. That inspiration, that turnout, is one of those changes in politics we need to build on. So, how do we inspire young people to get into politics and get into the political system? I've already discussed young people and young candidates representing the youth voice, and this is important for multiple reasons. To begin with, the 18 to 30-year-olds represent 20% of the voting population, yet they only represent 2% of the parliament. We know that diversity is important in politics. We know that unless you're experiencing it, you do not know what it's like to be a woman in 2016, what it's like to be BME in 2016, what it's like to be disabled in 2016. And these groups need better representation in Parliament. But on top of that, unless you're experiencing the political systems at 20, you don't know what those are like either. Unless you're 25 today, unless you're 30 today, you don't know the impacts of those government policies. And I appreciate that you do need skills and experience in the House of Commons, but that diversity is important because unless you're experiencing it, no one knows what it's like. And I'm really sorry about this. I'm hoping that there's going to be a great editing team. So importantly, in 2015 general election, we saw the election of SNP MP Murray Black, who has proven that young people in the House of Commons can drive changes regardless of age. And judging by the conversations that I've had with Glaswegian taxi drivers, she doesn't just inspire women at the age of 20, she improves what young people do in politics. You don't need experience to listen to your constituents and have a moral compass that can make the changes that you want to see in this world. And beyond representation of people, we also need better representation of policies. Young people are currently caught in a catch-22 of policymaking. It's widely recognised that political parties try and capture the grey vote, as they'll turn out to polling booths in greater numbers. In fact, in the general election, 42% of young people turned out to vote compared to 80% of over 65s. This means that older voters are targeted more heavily by political parties, and as a result, young people are further alienated from the political process. Looking at political manifestos, parties need to do two things to encourage young people to come out and vote. Firstly, having a dedicated youth manifesto, one with zero jargon, setting out youth policies that are directly relevant to our generation. And secondly, having a specific section of their manifestos dedicated to young people. In addition to this, political parties can empower young people by making them an integral part of their policy-making process. I'm often asked why the Green Party have such good policies for millennials. And the truth is that in the Green Party, we actually use evidence-based policy that's discussed, debated and voted on by our conference, which means that all generations are listened to and represented. Other political parties could also take the Green Party's lead too, in having young people represented on their executive committees. The Green Party have high levels of young Greens on their executive, which means that all decisions that are made with a younger audience in mind. Sorry. These 2 points are very well and good, but beyond the fact that young people don't think that politicians represent them or that policies don't relate to them, young people also feel like they don't know what politics is. That sounds odd, doesn't it? They don't know what politics is. That's a direct quote from someone I've spoken to. And as an advocate, as someone who is keen to have votes at 16, I think one of the important things that we need to do is to make sure that we put our school system into having a stronger education in our school system so that when young people reach voting age, they're educated and empowered to go out and vote. We need to be teaching people not just about political parties themselves, but how institutions operate, how politics affects our daily lives, and how we can change things. I'm a strong advocate of votes at 16 around taxes and military, and I think this actually making sure that we focus on the education is an important part, because beyond that aspect, we also will encourage stronger voter registration, as we saw in Scotland. And on top of that as well, we will empower a generation about what their vote means and get people into the routine of actually voting. Many schools actually hold mock elections, which builds into that routine. And that's something that means that when young people go to their dusty community halls to vote for the first time, it will seem less daunting, and that they will be able to put the same motions in place for our political institutions. And talking of dusty community halls, we need to stop young people thinking that politics is a buzzword for boring. And that I know that politics isn't the most exciting thing. We're never going to get as many people watching BBC Parliament as the Premier League, for example, but it does need to be more engaging. You may have realised that in the Green Party, we've been trying to do that with our election broadcasts. In fact, in 2015, we were the first UK political party whose party political election broadcast trended on social media. And we did that again in 2016. And for those of you who have seen it, they'll realise that they'll know what I mean when I say, when I speak to young people, they say that they literally love it. We also see millennials dedicating themselves to the Bernie Sanders campaign. Now, I love Bernie's policies, but then on top of that, you can go out and you can screen print Bernie Sanders t-shirts, or you can be part of a rally that's so big it's like a Beyonce concert. Or you can even, if you get involved, you're an integral cog of the machine and appreciated for what you're doing to the campaign. And this brings me on to the final point of youth representation in politics, the most important part, and that's you. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't been encouraged and supported to prove what I can do in politics, and I hope that in turn I have encouraged and supported other people to do the same. But we live in a time where young people feel consistently patronised, and politics is one of the areas where we're worst at doing it. We need to ensure that we build inspiration, that we encourage enthusiasm, and we ensure that young people have the opportunity to prove what they can do in politics. And that's the job of each and every one of us. Last year, a quarter of the 66,000 members of the Green Party were under the age of 30. When we ensure that we better represent young people and actually engage and empower them, we create a stronger democratic system that proves that politics isn't just for an older generation. Thank you.
Actually, it has been shown that we can use renewables to produce stuff. We can make now large solar arrays of mirrors that can concentrate sunlight into a central power tower, and that can produce